You know, people will say whatever they need to say in order to get elected. I feel like that's a pretty safe statement to make. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, or independent, I think you can probably agree with that sentiment. Hell, that wasn't a joke that I had told Devlin and MORE during the local half hour of the program about me becoming president of my elementary school. Based on a lie. I promised we had Pokemon cards banned. It was 1999. Pokemon cards were all the rage, and like a bunch of fifth and sixth graders. I was in sixth grade at the time. Were stealing each other's Pokemon cards when you had the good ones, and so they ended up getting banned from the school. I was running against two other people in my elementary school, someone who played on the, whatever the hell the 12-year-old football league is called at that point, and then one of the cheerleader types from that, and then of course there was nerdy old Ben, and I was like, well, how am I gonna be able to pull this off? I feel like I'm polling at a distant third if I had that polling data. But it was an election amongst the entire school, not just the sixth grade. And so I got up there. We had a cafegimatorium, right? If you went to a small enough school, you know what I'm talking about. You had a cafeteria, it was a gymnasium and an auditorium. It was a cafegimatorium. And I got up there and I said, "You vote for me, and I will bring Pokemon cards back." And you heard everybody just like whisper, "Oh my God, he said he's going to bring Pokemon cards back." And I won in a landslide. And I was president from 1999 till 2000. And then I made no effort to bring Pokemon cards back. And I was booed pretty resoundingly everywhere I went for the remainder of that year. It was a good lesson to learn at a young age. If you're going to make promises, follow through with your promises. Uh, Politicians, however, they don't have it as lucky. When I messed up, when I didn't follow through with my promises, there were repercussions. Had there been another election, I never would have been able to win that second election. Fortunately, we graduated from elementary school that year. I went to junior high, and that record disappeared from my permanent record. Right? People are going to say what they need to say to get elected. I totally get that. And unfortunately, for right wing voters, given a certain contingency of your base, some of the elected officials are going to need to pretend like they don't know what happened in 2020, even though anybody with basic common sense knows why or what took place in 2020. In other words, nothing. Nothing took place in 2020. Joe Biden won the election. Donald Trump's a spoiled little brat, and he convinced a bunch of you guys to be mad about made up stuff for years. Some of you are mad right now. Some of you are screaming at your radio, "Oh my God, this guy's so partisan. Is he ignoring this obvious evidence?" No, there is no obvious evidence. You're wrong. Unfortunately, in 2026, there are still people that feel the need to talk that way about things. Now, I am not doing this. Obviously, the Republican example is egregious, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Chris Taylor, the more liberal-leaning justice, the Democratic favorite to win in our the Supreme Court seat taking place at the beginning of April here, she's obviously going to rule in favor of Democratic wants and needs, whether that be Act 10, whether that be map drawing, whether that be abortion access. And again, this is stuff that, by and large, outside of partisan map drawing, not to say that it'll be partisan, but Democrats aren't above it. We'll see what ultimately ends up happening here. But in terms of Act 10 and abortion, I wouldn't mind seeing those things happen. I know how I'm going to vote in this race, not because I know anything about the judicial system, but because the judicial system has essentially just become another political process. It's not particularly difficult to see that. And I think pretending otherwise in 2026 should be viewed as contemptuous. Do you think I'm a fool that I don't understand this? I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm not saying that it's the way it should be. But if anybody is showing up to talk to you and say, "You got to vote for this candidate because the other candidate is obviously an activist," you're probably right. But so's the candidate that you are polling for right now. And the most egregious example of it, because again, I am not an election alarmist. I do not try and scare people about what might happen in November of 26 or in 28. But MAGA, you got to meet me halfway if you're going to expect me to not be suspicious of what is going on behind the scenes. Maria Lazar, who is the Republican candidate, was on PBS Wisconsin earlier this week, and she was asked a question about the ruling. And listen to this, because I'm going to be honest with you. If you want to dispel the idea that the right-wing candidate isn't just a MAGA activist, just like Chris Taylor is going to be a liberal activist, then you're going to have to do a better job of this stuff. Listen to this answer that came up about the ruling after the 2020 election. This should be pretty easy to say. Watch. Joe Biden won in 2020, and just as an olive branch, also in 2016, Russia obviously wanted Trump to win, but in no way did they affect the outcome of the 2016 election in any kind of meaningful way. They posted a bunch of memes on Facebook that a 14-year-old would have been able to see through, but people of a certain demographic who aren't as online as younger people fell for the stuff that was being sent out there through the social media avenues and ultimately allowed it to skew their decision. But that is not election fraud. That's not election rigging. That's not a fixed election, just like 2020 wasn't. You see how hard that was? It wasn't hard at all. You just say it. You just say the words and you move on. Let's see how this candidate does in this particular test.
Their case that's going back a few years now is Trump versus Biden from the 2000 election, seeking to invalidate more than 200,000 votes from Dane and Milwaukee counties. That was a 4-3 decision on whether they should take the case
on standing
and decide, then go forward, not actually how they would have ruled on that. But what was your interpretation of the decision of the court at that time?
Well, standing goes back all the way to the Teagan case as well, and talking about who has standing and taxpayer standing, and not in this case, it would have been taxpayer, but voter standing. This is sort of an area that's really deeply in flux with our state Supreme Court. They have issued several opinions that have gone around the edges of it. And so I'm not going to comment any further on where they would go, because I honestly believe that standing is going to come back up in our next term. So when I'm on this court, I don't want to have someone say, you said in an interview, so now you can't rule on this case.
As far as whether someone's going to say, well, you didn't answer the question, Trump v. Biden, would you have overturned all those votes? Can you give me a reaction to that?
Well, I have answered the question, but with respect to overturning votes, I strongly believe that every vote should be counted. So every legal valid vote should be counted. So I wouldn't comment, and I don't actually know the parameters of how they were going to try to disenfranchise or not disenfranchise voters. So I really don't have any further thing that I can say about that case.
That clip I just played for you guys was a little over a minute and 20 seconds. That was an 80-second clip, and we couldn't get a straight answer about what took place in 2020 and how Maria Lazar would have voted in 2020. Watch how an actual candidate answers that question. Who won in the 2020 election, and how would you have ruled in the case about counting votes? Oh, Joe Biden won, and all the votes were obviously legitimate, so I would have allowed all those votes to be counted. She even makes the qualifier of legal votes. That doesn't do a good job of putting my mind at ease that you're intending to do the right things, because I'm watching the efforts to misrepresent both the SAVE Act as well as the Save America Act as voter ID laws, as opposed to what they are, voter restriction laws, laws that are designed to make it more difficult for certain populations to vote, and those certain populations just happen to vote democratically a lot more than the other ones do. And I don't mean illegals, MAGA. So when you see a judge answer this way, it should be pretty condemning. Insert Rich Eisenberg, who, if you're not familiar with Rich, he is the president of the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. They are the Republican version of Law Forward, the liberal law firm, both of which claim to be nonpartisan. Not falling for that one bit. They're very clearly partisan. I can tell you what Law Forward's agenda is, and I can tell you what Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty's agenda is. It's not particularly difficult to deduce what their agendas are. He comes out of the woodwork offering the same clip that I just played for you, saying, I'm not sure if she wants me to say it, but calling Maria Lazar a MAGA candidate is just as ridiculous as calling Dan Kelly and Brad Schimmel MAGA candidates, which they were. It's a political lie designed to make the Supreme Court race about something other than the court and candidates. Now, again, I am not pretending that I think Chris Taylor isn't going to clearly side with Democrats all the time. That's absolutely what it is. But then let's call this what it is, and let's start calling on our elected officials to start doing things. You can kind of see the constriction of the law writing process happening right in front of your face, whether it's on the state level here in Wisconsin, or even if you look at it nationally with the U.S. Congress versus the Supreme Court. Lawmakers are passing the duty of making laws on to judges, whether it's liberal or conservative, because they don't want to come back and either say they did or didn't vote for a bill. They want to go around election season saying, look, I wanted to do this, but the judges wouldn't let me. Or look, I tried to stop this from happening, but you got these crazy judges over there. And then they turn around and blame the judges for being activists because Congress no longer wants to legislate. Whether it's talking about funding the government and getting DHS funded and putting a couple of restrictions on the mass Gestapo army that we have running around right now, or whether it's about reining in a president who clearly wants to drag us into another forever war with unlimited funding for bombs and blowing up school children, but no funding for hospitals, childcare, elder care, education, or anything that actually matters. They don't want those heavy issues on their plate. They don't want to take them on. And the Wisconsin legislature is no different. We've been watching. I've been here since my first show was September 6, 2022 in Wisconsin. I don't know that I can count 10 laws of relevance that have been passed since I've been here that are especially not worth talking about. I can tell you guys about proposals. I can tell you guys about tax cuts. I can tell you guys about a proposed public option. I can tell you guys about expanding Medicaid. But I can't tell you about very many laws that are passed. And I think it's about shifting the blame to the courts. And I mean, I did a segment about this 2 days ago, I think. We just got an announcement from Annette Ziegler, one of the conservative justices. And yes, she is exactly that because she voted to overturn the 2020 election. So I'd argue that's diehard MAGA. She is retiring as well. That means all three of the justices that voted to overturn the 2020 election will be gone within 6 years of deciding to make that effort. That should probably be a pretty damning statistic for anybody that can't come forward and say, oh, no, like, yeah, the obvious thing happened. Like, can we just go with the obvious thing happened and move on from there? The writing's on the wall, and they recognize that, and pretending that only one side is engaging in this just makes you look partisan. Embrace the reality, demand more out of the legislative process, and people won't be turning to the courts anymore to try and get their desired outcomes. This ain't rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. It's just the position that we find ourselves in here. And to be frank, it's the position we find ourselves in nationally, as the only bill that has passed in the Trump administration is a massive tax handout to billionaires, while Senator Ron the Swamp Johnson runs around saying we got to figure out ways to cut spending. I got one suggestion for you, Ron. We got our first call on the WHBY talk and text lines. Anybody wants to chime in? 920-281-1150, 920-281-1150. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben, here's a concept. If Congress doesn't want to do their job, why don't we just eliminate them?
What do you mean by that?
Well, we just don't have congressmen anymore. We just have a Senate. Maybe the Senate will take the hint and start doing their job. But, I mean, if Congress doesn't want to do their job, we shouldn't have a Congress.
I think that's too extremist for my blood, but I appreciate the opinion nevertheless. I'd rather we just have a Congress that does the thing that the Constitution tells them that they should be doing right now. I think that's probably where my most frustrating perspective comes from on this right now. It's not a matter. The founding fathers, despite their flaws, had some pretty good ideas when they were concocting this country. It was a matter of not realizing that so many people would just completely remove themselves from the process entirely. And for the record, same thing under Obama. I shouldn't have to make this distinction every time, but just to be clear, as an actual leftist, I am anti-illegal war activity, no matter if the almighty R or D is next to the president's name. I hate war. I especially hate pointless war. And it feels like that's the only kind of war that has happened in my lifetime. So I'm not in favor of getting rid of Congress. I'm in favor of holding Congress to account, whether that means redrawing every district so we're not this super gerrymandered country anymore, whether it means a change to the Constitution, which Thomas Jefferson advocated for every 19 years, because unlike the people in power today, the people who actually wrote the Constitution, others understood that times they were a changin', and there's no way that a piece of paper written in 1776 would even be relevant in 1796, let alone in 2026. But here we are acting like changing it in any kind of meaningful way. Not to say a handful of amendments haven't been written over the years, but the idea of making some changes over time has been so unthinkable in the eyes of so many. My favorite turn of phrase that I've used since before I was in media is when the founding fathers wrote the Constitution, they couldn't even conceive of the idea of Oregon, let alone the internet. They have no idea where life was headed, and I think that's kind of been borne out over the past 2.5 centuries as we get ready to celebrate the anniversary here coming up. I don't get it. I don't get it. We got a couple of texts. KG saying, who won the 2020 presidential election is a convenient filter. Any answer other than Joe Biden means that you can go on my ignore list. I absolutely agree with you, KG. Like this isn't this. I can't stress enough. I have received no less than a half a dozen offers to interview people that claim that they can prove that Elon Musk and Donald Trump stole the 2024 election. Not only have I not invited them on the show, I haven't even responded back to any of their emails. I wasn't even polite about it because I'm not dignifying it with an answer. The Democratic Party lost in 2024 because they ran one of the worst campaigns I've ever seen in my life. Honest to God, it was like they were trying to lose. And anybody pretending otherwise is a fool and shouldn't be taken seriously. Just like anybody still claiming Joe Biden lost in 2020 is a fool and shouldn't be taken seriously. And that includes elected officials as well. DSL says lawmakers purposely write vague laws so there's more wiggle room for corruption. The courts share some of the blame, but it'd be better if laws were clear. I agree. You know, Herman Cain, RIP, but Herman Cain took some heat for saying this, but I do think there were definitely elements of truth in what he was saying. He said when he was running in 2012 that the bills he'd get back are 1,200 pages long. And he's like, no one's actually going to read that in any kind of thorough manner. Now, you could argue if you're going to get paid $174,000 a year to write laws, you could probably take a couple days and read 1,200 pages. I would probably be one of those people. But DSL's point is exactly right. And Herman Cain said, if you elect me as president, no bill will be longer than 3 pages long. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a Jon Stewart segment. And he's going, I'm Herman Cain, and if you elect me, our bills will be printed on the back of a saltine cracker. And like going on and using smaller and smaller surfaces. But it was making light of a principle that is kind of on point. And I think DSL is right. It's the same issue with the tax code. As Donald Trump famously pointed out in 2016, any tax avoidance that takes place in this country is very rarely actually illegal. It's exploiting loopholes that Donald Trump has only exacerbated, allowing for jet fuel write-offs and other dumb crap like that while teachers are still paying for their own school supplies. But you're not going to convince me that Obama, Hillary, Kamala, Biden, or any of the rest of the funky bunch had any interest in actually reining in any of those legal loopholes that exist in our tax code. And the same thing goes with a lot of the laws that are written. So you're not wrong on that one. That's for sure. And KG says we have to expand the House. And Anna says Thomas Jefferson wanted the Constitution updated every 20 years. I already said that, Anna. Where are you at? But nevertheless, this race is less than a month away. It's one of the quietest. It is the quietest Supreme Court race since I've been here. Maybe it's because the balance is no longer in jeopardy. But this does point to a larger trend that I highlighted on Tuesday of the right on a statewide level is struggling to win the majority right now if Trump is not on the ballot. That it's that simple. I'm just going to be honest with you. That's where they find themselves now. And I've seen some of the polling data, and it doesn't seem like that's going to be changing this election either. So, I mean, obviously go out and vote, but I'm just being real with you guys about what I'm seeing there in the polling. Saying stuff like this is going to appeal to a certain segment of the population. I'd argue about 27% of the population. the same 27% that thinks that forever wars are necessary. And with that, we're going to go to break. I want to pivot in the conversation. We're going to save Iran war talk until the 10 o'clock hour. I posted on my socials, if you guys haven't seen it yet, a chart that shows on a president by president basis the number of counties that need access to federal tax dollars in order to exist. More than 25% of their entire salary coming from the government to help keep them afloat. I'm not shaming any of these counties for a second. Lord knows if anybody's aware of exactly what percentage of people are struggling to get by in this country right now, it's this guy. I want to talk to you guys about the partisan breakdown of those counties and the frustration that I feel trying to find common ground with people that are struggling to get by. And in order to address it, we just have to hold about 1,000 people to account. But unfortunately, there's segments of this population that still want to scapegoat the poorest among us instead of the obvious problems facing them today. If you haven't seen the chart yet, it is available on all my socials, and we're going to jump into that chart on the other side of the break. You're listening to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. All right, we're back. Ben Cominos, WHBY. By the way, streaming live on YouTube. Please do subscribe to that YouTube channel at Ben Cominos, all one word. Just type that into the search bar. Download the WHBY app. Find me anywhere you get podcasts if you can't listen to the entire show. If you're newer to the program, if you haven't realized yet, you kind of have to listen to the whole show for it to make sense. I don't most talk radio just does like 2 stories and alternates back and forth, because let me let you guys inside on a little secret here in media. Especially like talk radio, like the show I do, they're supposed to encourage you. They're like, yeah, like just do the same 2 stories over and over again and just repeat yourself every 15 minutes, because every 15 minutes you're getting a new audience, because, you know, people are getting in and out of the cars. I expect you guys to download the app. I expect you guys to follow along on YouTube and Facebook and social media and all that jazz. And a lot of you guys have bought into it, and it's awesome. But I recognize if you're newer to it, if you're not necessarily used to this style of talk radio, I'm banking on this being the future of how this profession is going to go, and God willing, it's also not going to be as diehard right wing kind of clueless as what has persisted in this line of work up until people like me kind of started to show up here. But and again, this segment I think is going to do a really good job of highlighting exactly what kind of program I've always wanted this to be, because as I mentioned, I posted, it was a chart made available by the Wall Street Journal that I'm going to go through here that kind of highlights a pretty major problem that we are facing in this nation. The number of counties that are receiving significant federal assistance has ballooned since 2000. That is the name of the chart that is up there. And again, significant assistance is defined as over 25% of the total personal income is coming from the federal government. Okay? Now, anybody gave, I mean, it's not partisan, it's accurate, but anybody who's trying to dunk on the right oftentimes highlights that the right craps on social programs while also highlighting that the biggest welfare recipients are the reddest states. I call them the Gulf of Luigi states, your Arkansas, your Alabama, your Mississippi, your Georgia. This is where the largest amounts of our tax dollars are going to kind of facilitate some of the poorest communities. I have a friend who was a teacher in Arkansas who told me she went to go visit a student who either didn't show up. I don't remember the specifics of why she ended up going to the house. And the house turned out to be a roof with 4 tarps for walls. This is a house in America. Like, this wasn't somewhere in a third world country, as elected officials would have you believe. This is happening in our own backyard. And if you're unaware of it, you don't even realize that this is the way that so many people are living in this country, despite being employed, but just not being paid enough to even exist, let alone improve the situation you find yourself in. How's that kid supposed to learn? How's that kid supposed to grow up and then take part in a system that is only getting more expensive every single year? I do not begrudge the right-wing states for taking federal dollars for a single bleeping second. I think it should be expected and it shouldn't be looked down upon. We should be, can't say that word, we should be ticked as hell that our government has allowed 978 billionaires to take all of our money clearing trillions of dollars since Reaganomics and leaving us with nothing, and then saying that anybody highlighting that are the welfare queens. In 2000, 131 blue state counties had this significant federal assistance, the 25% number. 131, 186 Republican ones did in 2000. That went 152, 435. Then it went to 237, 760, 228, 992, 169, 1,276, 240, 1,746. And that's where it stands as of 2020. The data is not available for 2024 yet, or at least it isn't compiled in this chart. But if I had to venture a guess, it's probably gone up since 2020. I posted this on my socials, and on TikTok, it is actually doing quite a bit here. And now I understand. I attached it to a 60-second video of me talking about what's going on and the fact that when someone like me shows up, says tax the rich, says hold the billionaires to account, the people that are siphoning the money out of our bank account. And this isn't my opinion. This is borne out in fact. Government data backs this up, that trillions of dollars are missing from the middle class relative to the late 70s, and those same trillions have been gained in the 1%. It's not up for debate what ended up happening. St. Reagan showed up, cut taxes. Every other Republican president since then shows up, cuts taxes, and then Democrats don't do anything to roll it back because they're just center-right Republicans. But, they're extremists or whatever. And that's why all of us feel like we're on an edge, or so many of us feel like we're on an edge right now, is because of this objectively observable data. So you hear these statistics, and immediately, because we're so tribalist, and I did this segment yesterday, but it was Blue MAGA coming at me. Because we're so tribalist, right-wingers think I'm attacking them with this list. They're like, oh, now show us how many counties in general are red states. Actually, one person even said 84% of all counties are red states, 23% of counties are blue states. Now, ignore the fact that that doesn't even kind of add up to 100%. I'm not going to make fun of the guy because I'll feel bad, or the girl because I'll feel bad. But let's ignore the fact that that doesn't add up to 100%. I'm not doing this to dunk on red states. I'm doing this to highlight that you guys are the ones that continue voting for the party that are cutting the taxes for the people, and you're watching what's happening in your counties happen slowly. Again, had this happened all at once, had it jumped from 2000 being 186 red counties to 2020, 1,746, an almost 10 times increase. Had that happened in 4 years, there would have been outcry. People would have noticed it immediately. It's been the slow death of the middle class for 45 years that has gotten us in this position. And it don't have crap to do with Mexicans, guys. It doesn't have anything to do with transgender people. It has to do with wealth inequality. And honestly, it makes me sad. It makes me sad that I can say these things. I can highlight the obvious reality behind them, and I still get highlighted as some kind of anarchist, as some kind of extremist. Again, let's see here. Red states do use the welfare system much more, but this is misleading to make it look much worse. Yes, there are 500 to 600 blue counties and 2,500 to 2,600 red counties. More people live in blue counties. This is a stupid way to determine anything. More people live in blue counties is very telling. So blah, 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 blah. And then, like, what's funny is this app will block things that thinks will hurt your mental health. But there's plenty more comments echoing the same sentiment because they're engaging in tribalism. They think I'm trying to dunk on red counties because there's so many more red counties accepting welfare than there are blue counties. No, I don't care where the money's going. I don't care if every single federal dollar of assistance goes to somebody who votes the opposite of me. This is a working class show. And you know who the working class comprises? Everybody takes part in the system. Everybody is getting screwed over to the system. It's a matter of trying to highlight to these people that it's not the minorities that are doing this to you. It's not the transgender people. It's not the Mexicans. It's not the black people. It's not the liberals. It is a minority. It's about 1% of the population that's doing this to you. It's just not the minority that you're willing to aim your ire at. It was very eye-opening getting these kind of comments. And as much as I hate social media, I'm not going to lie, this TikTok thing's growing on me because it's giving me content, because it shows you how so many people outside the purview of the Fox cities are beginning to feel. And we got a texter here on the YouTube channel. Every bootlicker on the internet will cry out, let the billionaires keep every penny of their hard-earned money. Exactly. It's not even hard-earned money. They're quite literally taking it from us. And the data shows that. That's not even me being hyperbolic. The data shows this information to you guys. You just have to look it up and be willing to accept it when you read it. To me, if I had to guess, I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm a deep thinker about this kind of stuff. I think it's that the billionaire problem feels existential. I think a lot of people feel like they are incapable of doing something about it, that the billionaire class is too powerful and there's nothing that we can do, but I absolutely can dunk on somebody who makes less money than I do, who's in a worse position than I am right now. Maybe I could make their lives harder because I don't know that I have the power to make billionaires' lives harder. And I want to keep reminding you guys, in the least violent way possible, there's a hell of a lot more of us than there are of them. It's called the 1% for a reason, because there's 99% of us that aren't included in it. Life doesn't have to work this way. And I'll be the first to tell you, there's plenty of liberals, even in my own life, that'll fight oligarchy. We gotta fight the oligarchy, but really doesn't understand what that means. That really doesn't understand that this is a two-party system designed to funnel our tax dollars into the oligarchy's pockets. And until we see viable options on how to get out of this, and I will admit, I'm starting to see those options percolate through the crowd here. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I'm seeing a lot of those options start to populate the voter sphere here, and I'm excited about that. But MAGA, you guys got to come on board with this if it's going to happen. I used to say this when Joe Biden was president. I think in a lot of ways, I think that MAGA and I have a lot more in common than diehard liberals have in common with me. The difference is, of course, is that I'm never going to blame migrants for the position we're in. So I'm going to need you guys to wake up on that front. But outside of that, I get it. And I see Jaro Mani saying, I think to tell people that the left versus right fight is the wrong one, we need to open up the working class and the ultra-rich fight. I would totally agree with that sentiment. I would absolutely agree with that sentiment. It's why unions are so important to the movement. It's why people making less than six figures are so important to the movement. And that's what's so interesting, is you even watched it happen in New York when liberals kind of consolidated behind Andrew Cuomo, who famously was accused a dozen times over of sexual harassment when he was in office, made terrible decisions during COVID, but liberals didn't care as long as they stopped that dastardly Mamdani from raising taxes on the rich. And now you have Kathy Hochul, who's blocking that effort, another Democrat trying to do so, highlighting that those people are just as responsible for creating the Donald Trump movement as the people who voted for Donald Trump themselves. Is the only way that you can get out of this mess. It's the only way to stop this. People get mad when I say it, but if liberals just got out of their own way in 2016, let Sanders do the thing, we would have never had to deal with Donald Trump. Because I'll tell you right now, if Hillary Clinton had won, Donald Trump would have been waiting in the wings still, because Hillary was just going to do another Obama thing. And until Democrats can rationalize the fact that Obama led to Trump, that as much as he did like two good things over the course of 8 years, that wasn't bad, but that's what ultimately led to the situation we're in. There were predictions when Joe Biden won. They said, unless he comes through and does actually progressive moves, that the MAGA movement was going to come back in 2024 and be more emboldened than ever. You tell me if that person was right or not, because I already have an answer. We received 2 calls. I'm going to get this person on here first. Hello, you're on Outside the Box. Hello. Good talk. Let's try the other one. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Hey, Ben,
Hey,
it's
Brian, what's
from
up?
Fremont.
Yeah.
You've been talking about Republicans and Democrats, and how they're similar. The perfect way to see it is look at what's happening since Donald Trump took over. They've been talking, the Democrats, about how they're upset about this and about that, but they either don't vote or they vote just enough to allow him to do anything he wants to do. They're both in it together, and we have to wake up and realize that we are fighting two sides that are keeping us fighting against each other. We're never going to get anywhere until we start looking at third-party options.
I'm right there with you, Brian. I kind of feel a similar notion here if liberals don't want to pull it together, but I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to play some audio to kind of go along with your claim here. I think MAGA is waking up, and I think you guys aren't giving them enough credit. Because I hate myself, I was watching the Donald Trump rally in Kentucky yesterday because they're targeting Thomas Massie because he's actually getting popular. By the way, before that rally, one of those jerk political betting sites had him at a 53% chance to win his election. After the rally, it went up to 67%. So I am inspired on that front. Not to say that I don't disagree with Massie on a handful of issues, but you got to take the what is it, the wins over replacement or whatever, right? Wins above replacement. But listen to this audio clip. I'm not going to tell you what I heard during this. I'm going to let you listen to it first, and then I'll tell you what I heard. But I'm going to let you guys determine what you heard from the clip first. Listen to this.
Under our policies, prices for chicken, eggs, cheese, butter, potatoes, and fresh fruit are lower today by a lot than when I took office. Hotel rates, automobile prices, and rent payments are way down as well. As a result of my direction to purchase $200 billion in mortgage bonds, a risky move, perhaps, but not for me. Mortgage rates are now the lowest in more than 5 years, and the annual cost of a typical new mortgage is down almost $5,000.
Now, you obviously don't have the video to go along with that, but based on the audio you heard right there, are you expecting it to be in an auditorium, or are you expecting it to be at one of his live rallies in a stadium setting where there's a bunch of people cheering and screaming? Because based on that reaction, you may have noticed that you could hear a pin drop behind the things that he was saying. Because I can tell you, as a renter, I ain't seen my rent go down. I've seen it go up 3 times in 3 years under Joe Biden and Donald Trump as a result of corporate landlords consolidating the industry and corporate greed being taken over and not really being kept in check in any kind of meaningful way. And I'm willing to bet most of the people in Kentucky probably agree with my sentiment a little bit more than what they're hearing Donald Trump say right there. People are waking up to what's happening right now. And I don't think it's going to go away, especially if they don't make some kind of big moves. I've been predicting an actual rebate check going to Americans about 3 weeks before the midterm elections, much like how Joe Biden acted like he was going to forgive student debt right before elections, only for that to immediately get reversed. But at least a bunch of young people came out rejuvenated and kind of staved off as much of a red wave as people anticipated was coming. Not going to say that they're both not guilty of it, but I am saying the people are waking up. They know what they're looking at, and they're expecting more out of their elected officials. It's just taking a little longer than I wanted to. We got a short break here. We're going to have a little bit of time on the other side of the hour. I do want to continue these thoughts, but I got to get these last couple commercials in here before we go. We will be back in a flash. Stay right where you are. Ben Cominos, WHBY. You guys thought I was lying about being back quickly, didn't you? What's funny is if you watch the rebroadcast of this on Political Voices Network at 1, there are no commercials in between, so it's just pop. You're back in. Or if you listen on the app later, but obviously listen live as well. So many ways to take the program in, and the audience is growing, and there's a lot of people excited that a show like this exists in a local forum, and that means a lot to me that so many of you guys are into it. And please do tell your friends. I rely a lot on word of mouth for this to work, mixed with black magic, which I don't want to threaten using, but I will if you guys don't get it together. So go tell your friends about this show if you haven't already. We got a couple of texts coming through. Larry, of course, saying it's the politically connected versus the middle class. I saw a really interesting quote about that where it was like the 1%, in conjunction with the other 4%, like the 5% wealthiest in America pay the next 4%. If you watch MSNBC, CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC, a lot of those anchors are making 7-figure jobs. And I oftentimes state anybody making in the millions to do what I do is strictly there in order to convince you to like lead you away. Hell, I saw one person message me saying maybe if Democrats had been in office, there wouldn't be 170 dead school children in the Iranian school. Meanwhile, you watched under Joe Biden for a year and a half, children being bombed every day in Gaza. So the idea that liberals would have stopped what's happening is a laughable one. But anybody who says that kind of thing is obviously bought into one of the two flanks of propaganda. It's their job to convince them that the rest of us don't know what we're talking about. And it's incredibly frustrating. And what's absolutely nuts is I saw this yesterday because you guys know I do the rounds on the national networks, not to actually be informed. I get my real news from actual sources, but for criticism purposes. And I also write for a publication, the Minocqua Brewing Times, once a week. It goes live on their Substack every Tuesday morning. And I referred to it, as I do to you guys on the show all the time, as Donald Trump's war of choice in Iran. And I'm trying to get a patent on that name because that feels like the best thing to call this, because it's the only way to describe what we've been dealing with. I heard one of the primetime shows refer to it with the exact same phrasing yesterday, and I can't help but feel like they either listen to this show or read that publication, because I haven't heard anybody else say this. And it goes to show you that even though we may be tucked up here in the little corner in Northeast Wisconsin, more people are hearing our thoughts and what we want to see happen than I think we might even realize, which is an awesome feeling, because at the end of the day, this show's about enacting change. It's about inspiring people to get involved. And I feel like we're doing that more and more every single week. So I appreciate how much you guys are buying into this. But what else do we have here? Just simply MAGA loves billionaires. I mean, based on the way that Donald Trump has been enacting, there's no way to look at this other than they are the pro-billionaire party as of right now. Jerry says quite a few unions in New York City endorsed Mom Donnie. Oh, hell yeah. I mean, they're definitely jumping on board. I kind of conflated those two sentences, and I understand why you're letting me know that, Jerry, but I didn't want it to sound like that. I just mean there definitely are some people involved in the unions that either don't politically engage and I'm not even saying vote for Democrats, because again, Democrats will ultimately leave you high and dry if they needed to. But it is nice to see them kind of engaging in that kind of action, but you would hope to see it at a little more consistent basis, the people who truly mean business for the working class. We have to consolidate. If we're going to be able to push back against this. I'm never highlighting this data to dunk on one party or the other or any demographic of people. We all need help at one time or another. There's people very close to me in my life that found themselves unexpectedly on unemployment starting last week. The person was in the medical industry, finds themselves currently on unemployment right now. It's not their fault. It's a matter of the system. Have you seen how many layoffs are going on around this nation right now? And we are cutting the social safety net with impunity while blowing up schools in Iran. So this isn't about shaming or guilting, but it's a matter of, if we're going to get through this, you can't turn around and say it's because Mexicans are getting all our welfare. No, you sound stupid when you say that. I'm going to be honest with you. It's time to wake up. It's time to get serious. And to that effect, I do want to shift gears here. We're going to spend the 10 o'clock hour focusing on both the DHS shutdown as well as the war in Iran and the continued unexpected consequences of what's going on. And is Lindsey Graham the president now? Because I wasn't informed of that, if that's the case. I don't remember anybody voting for him outside of South Carolina. All that and more, other side of the news. Outside the Box, WHBY, Political Voices. All right, we're back to Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY and Political Voices Network. Outside the Box is brought to you by Roush Plumbing and Remodeling, the plumbing and remodeling company the Fox Valley depends on. I'm watching the chat in my YouTube channel become friends. This is awesome. I absolutely love that. Keep doing that stuff. Keep doing that kind of stuff. This is all about bridging gaps. It's all about bridging gaps. It's all about coming together. That's a beautiful thing to see. This is still early. We haven't even been doing this for a week yet. We're absolutely still learning. And if you saw my Monday one, it was essentially unwatchable. So I don't even know if I count that one. Not because of the content, of course. The content was on point, but the internet took me down a peg. You guys know how it goes. Yeah, someone just said get DSL over here. Where are you at? Although he's normally driving when he's listening to the show. That's the thing. I was talking with Larry off the air. A lot of you guys driving, or a lot of you guys are just working in general and can't actually interact with the show. I get that. He said if he weren't retired, he absolutely wouldn't be able to do so. I realize there's only certain gigs that allow themselves the capacity to take part in the program, and I totally get that. But yeah, anybody who finds themselves not in a position to be distracted on the road, hop on over in that chat as well, and keep using the text line. I'm doing my best to bounce back and forth, try and get some emails in, learning some processes here, but we'll get through it. If you're just joining us, we started off in the first hour talking about the Wisconsin Supreme Court, some claims about partisanship in the court, and how in order to be taken seriously, I think we just have to embrace the partisanship in the court and start talking about it that way, as opposed to pretending that one side represents a return to normalcy or something like that, because I just don't believe you will convince a lot of people that that is the case. And then, of course, we pivoted into the cost of living crisis, the number of counties, both red and blue, that are on some kind of assisted extreme assistance, more than 25% of your entire wealth generated throughout the year coming from the government, and how it has trended upward every single 4-year period, regardless of who was president, what the makeup of Congress was. And I kind of highlighted that despite showing an obvious trend in the negative direction, people still wanted to boil it down to partisan talking points, as opposed to just embracing the actual message of what I was trying to show. And we ended that segment playing some audio from a Trump rally that highlights to me that even in Kentucky, a lot of people aren't buying his messaging that the cost of anything is actually coming down. Again, Bidenomics was working, was a giant pile of horse crap. Trumponomics is also not working. We instead are talking about a $50 billion package going to Iran. Now, as I mentioned, Lindsey Graham has been all over the internet, all over the cable networks and internet, trying to get people to jump on board with the war. I actually have some audio of him talking right here.
Man, Daddy, watch me twirl. Daddy, watch me.
That's Lindsey Graham trying to get people to watch him twirl on TV, essentially saying that he is intending to go to his families in South Carolina as a non-parent, which I am as well. No judgment on people who don't have kids, but if you don't have kids, maybe don't be telling people what they're going to do with their kids when you send them off to war or not. Some people are enjoying that. Yeah, no, sorry, I just pulled it. It is him though, right? I think that's from Fox News.
Man, Daddy, watch me twirl. Daddy.
I think that's Lindsey Graham trying to get either Trump or Bibi Netanyahu's attention, but I don't know which one. But he's been doing the rounds, trying to get people to buy in to what it is that he's trying to do over there. We just heard, if you're listening terrestrially on the radio, from the CBS News report, the new Khomeini, Ayatollah Khomeini, essentially said that the end of fighting isn't anywhere near soon. Now, I will say, I understand the bluster of this kind of thing. I understand bluffing. I understand pretending that you're prepared to go forever when in reality you might be on your last legs. We had a conversation with the professors yesterday, and I do tend to agree with them. By applying sea mines in the Strait of Hormuz, that really is a last-ditch effort to try and clamp down on things here, right? Because not only can the world's oil not be transported through there, but a lot of Iran's revenue in general is generated from there too. So it definitely is kind of a cut off your nose to spite your face kind of moment. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. But I'm not going to lie to you guys. It really does feel like even if we said, you know what, okay, we're done, Iran might still want to tussle a little bit and maybe get a few more concessions out of the matter, because things are definitely not trending in the right direction over there. I think we may have bitten off a lot more than we can chew. This feels like a very unplanned war. It feels like we're very unprepared about getting into this conflict in general, and that seems to be bearing out more and more as we continue moving through this year. The cost of oil is already back up over $90 again, and based on CBO estimates, every $10 increase in the cost of oil essentially translates to a $450 increase per year for every family that is going to be either buying gas, paying for goods that are going to have inflated costs as a result of the cost of gas, whatever the situation may be. That's $30. $30 is 10 times 3. 3 times 450 is $1,350. That's an extra $1,350 per family that we are going to be paying as a result of a war that doesn't even have a third, barely has 25% support from the American population. And I have a feeling that's going to be continue trending downward as time goes on. I mean, what's nuts to me is if you look at the polling data, before the war broke out, before anything actually transpired, Quinnipiac on January 14th showed that MAGA support for bombing Iran was 53%. It is now at 90% as of 2/28, when the most recent polling data by Quinnipiac was taken. It jumped almost a full 30% more than after the action actually took place. I'm going to be real with you guys. That's really not thinking for yourself. That's really not holding people to account here. And you know what's crazy? I looked it up just to see, because for those of you that are longtime listeners, you know that I was chased out of Pittsburgh because I went on the radio with opinions about funding for Ukraine right when the war started. And my boss at the time was somebody who had come from program directing Rudy Giuliani's radio show. So you can probably imagine the way that he felt compared to the kind of show that I do. He marches into the studio while I'm doing the program and says, "You need to pivot right now. You sound like a pro-Putin communist." Turns out that he had not received his marching orders from the Republican Party yet, as most Republicans hadn't. When the war first broke out, Republicans were the most likely demographic to tell you that we were not sending enough money to Ukraine to stomp Russia out, because they just assumed that being anti-Russia was going to be the attitude that Fox News was going to tell them to have. Sure enough, shortly thereafter, once Fox News got involved, they were like, "Nah, actually, we're anti-funding for Ukraine now." Wham! All of a sudden, it completely pivots. Now they're the smallest demographic that's looking for that. You see how fast that happens? You guys need to be able to kind of push back against this kind of stuff if you're going to be expected to be taken seriously on these matters. But moreover, wait, what's this say? Okay, no, I'm not going to read that live on the air. Look, there's people in my life from Iran. I have no ill will towards the people of Iran whatsoever. I think what we're doing in Iran is disgusting, and I think it needs to be called out as such. But I think cheering for any type of anti-American sentiment here, other than, of course, the cessation of all the bombing, the cessation of the pointless violence, the cessation of the stealing of minerals and resources, other than cheering for that, no. I do want them to stand up for themselves. I don't want American soldiers' lives to be lost. Again, contrary to the conversation I had with the professors yesterday, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody under 40. The professors, if you weren't listening yesterday, were saying that if positive outcomes in terms of national security happened, you might see a changing of attitudes towards the war in the Middle East. I'm here to tell you right now, anybody under 40 couldn't give a crap less, because nobody felt threatened by the people in Iran. It really is just that simple. But at the same time, it's a matter of finding that fine line of understanding what we're dealing with is disgusting, while also pulling for the safe return of as many Americans as possible as we're being thrust into this. Now, in line with the theme of the show today, consistency in thought, regardless of which political party engages in something. After the war in Ukraine began, oil prices skyrocketed. It's a worldwide entity. It changes depending on the situation. Absolutely. What sticks out to me, though, is when Joe Biden was in office, using the strategic reserve was being used as a ploy to buy votes in 2022 because the cost of oil and gas was rising so high. And because politics are what they are, the Republican Party would try and convince you that oil and gas prices were high because of something about welfare programs or Mexicans or some BS. I'm not sure. I stopped paying attention a long time ago. But it was actually because a war broke out. We are now dealing with the exact same thing right now. The YouTube chat's funny sometimes. We're dealing with something very similar right now. Looking at a comment made on Sean Hannity's show from Senator Tom Cotton. I have the audio right here. Now that Donald Trump's, here is a clip of, you know what? I messed up on the delivery of this. I was going to pretend that Tom Cotton was saying this about Donald Trump's decision, and then I was going to let you guys know that he was actually saying it about 2022. But since I butchered it, just give it a listen anyway, and we'll discuss it on the other side.
No, Sean, I think the question answers itself. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve was literally built because of conflict in the Middle East. After the Arab oil embargo in 1973, we decided as a nation to create that reserve, in part because we were so dependent upon Middle Eastern oil. It's not supposed to be used to help the Democrats in an election because their own runaway spending had created record inflation.
Okay. So it turns out that using the strategic reserve when you're a Democrat in office is a very selfish decision to be made in the name of gaining votes. But using the strategic reserve as a Republican president in an election year is a very strategic decision in order to lower the price of oil so that the war can continue going on. For the record, I support Donald Trump's decision to do this, just like I supported Joe Biden's decision to do this. It's a matter of consistency when it happens. The war is unnecessary, and to be perfectly frank, the war in Ukraine was unnecessary as well. But we're embroiled in it. And to be honest, it doesn't seem like Iran has any interest in backing off anytime soon. We saw the 2 oil tankers end up getting hit overnight last night. Or if you didn't, I'm breaking that news to you right now. 2 oil tankers got hit less than 48 hours after Donald Trump said, yeah, show some guts. Or it wasn't Donald Trump. It was Fox News. Said, show some guts, sail your ship through the Strait of Hormuz, and don't worry about it. You'll be fine. And 2 ships ended up getting bombed while they were trying to do so. It's not a fair assessment to make here regarding whether or not it's a gutsy move for a corporation to do this. Nobody who's getting paid to provide a service or a good should be required to take their life into their own hands to make sure that our economic well-being is still in good shape. The war needs to stop. We need a return to normalcy, and that's going to require 2 things. It's going to require Donald Trump to admit that he may have bit off more than he can chew, or hell, just declare victory. Declare victory. The 27% will be beating their chests saying America's great again, and they're going to think you're awesome, and the rest of us will know you're full of crap, and we can just move on. Like, I'm fine with that. I actually happily welcome that eventuality if it meant that people stop dying. Like, I happily welcome calls from MAGA supporters be saying, see, Ben, you thought this is going to be bad. Meanwhile, Donald Trump secured victory in less than a month. Great. I wish we could receive those phone calls. I can just close my ears while they're talking. It'll be fine. But one way or another, that's going to have to happen. Either admit defeat and get out, claim victory and get out. Don't care. And then Israel's going to need to back off. I mean, earlier this week, it was very underreported, but 83 children were killed in Lebanon as a result of Israel's bombing. That's more than double the amount of children that were killed on October 7th. Wasn't even a blip in the media. They're going to need to rein it in. They're going to need to stop this agenda for a greater Israel. They're going to need to stop trying to expand or use America's military-industrial complex to facilitate this kind of thing here. They're going to need to back off, and they're going to need to stop a lot of things here because this is what I'm building towards. I think the mystique of the American military-industrial complex may have taken some pretty heavy damage over the course of the last 3 weeks. I think a lot of people saw We took the THAAD system out of South Korea to move it to the Middle East because the Iron Dome ran out of the munitions necessary to keep Israel safe. It happened very quickly, and I'm still not going to report it as fact, but let's just say if you are on social media, there's a lot of videos that are legally not allowed to be played on mainstream networks because you are not allowed to show Israel's defense systems failing. And assuming what I'm seeing on socials isn't AI, which I'm fairly sure it's not, I'm pretty diligent with that kind of stuff. There's a lot more wreckage going on in Israel than I think a lot of the American population is even aware right now. The citizens there don't want to put up with it. The citizens here don't want to put up with it. It's corrupt governments trying to take advantage of a Middle East and rob them of their resources and then point and say, why can't these third world countries get their act together? That essentially is what this is all boiling down to. And I think people are fed up with it. In seeing the partisanship surrounding using the strategic oil reserve or the war in general, it's got to stop. And for the record, any Democrat who intends to vote along with this should be primaried immediately. You have no business being in the anti-war party, assuming that that still exists. We got a lot of comments piling up here. Jerry says, even at my most cynical, I never would have predicted a pro-Russia wing of the Republican Party. It is interesting. I saw 52% of people who voted for Donald Trump think Vladimir Putin's a better president than Joe Biden. It's remarkable to see that happen. Brian's asking, do you think Iran is just going to stop? I do, Brian. I think if everybody stopped bombing them, because there's an element of America, and I'm not accusing you of this, Brian, but like, just because they're from the other side of the world doesn't mean they're stupid or somehow don't have the exact same values that we do. Like, there's a lot of people over there just trying to raise families, have a job, live a life, and own a home that don't want to be taking part in any of this. Yeah, there's a religious theocracy, but guess what? We got people dying in southeastern America without access to abortion care because we got our own theocracy of people trying to impose their religious wills on the women of this country. There's just a little bit of more of a system of checks and balances, at least for a couple more years before the wheels completely fall off of it. But like, the idea that they wouldn't want this incessant bombing to stop, I think, is ridiculous. Now, would their government allow it? That's a question in its entirety. But like, they've already been dealing with protests and civil unrest. And if America and Israel backed off and Iran wanted to keep it going, I think there would be some pushback from their people. I hope there would be, at the very least here. Let's see. I've kind of let the chat here go a little bit unwatched here. It's almost like unqualified people brought us this war. Well, yeah, I call him the DEI defense secretary for a reason. We needed more stupid white people in the Defense Department, so that's how Pete Hegseth got the job. There's a lot of comments in here. War plus corporate greed, exactly. And I have Iran warned us. They also didn't mind the ports. Now, every time we hit a bank of theirs or a data center of theirs or a media facility of theirs, they are promising retribution in kind. War and violence only begets more war and violence. An eye for an eye. I'm pretty sure that was written in a fairly old book. This doesn't go anywhere. And I think a lot of lessons have been learned here. I think as I mentioned, I think a lot of the mystique has been removed from the military-industrial complex. I think I've told this story before on the show. I don't remember, though. But when I was an Uber driver back in Pittsburgh, I picked up a girl from China. I think she was 23 years old. She was taking part in this invention competition. And like, guys, I realize the connotation of me saying this, but I really can't think of a more appropriate comparison. She comes into my car with literally a humanoid robot at 23 years old, built from like the head of the robot was like a bucket, and like it was just the most makeshift thing that apparently was going to move and do stuff. And it reminded me of the kid from Goonies. And she comes in barely speaking English, but I always engaged in conversation with my passengers. It was kind of my MO, unless you made it clear you didn't want to talk. And she was like, yeah, I've wanted to move to America since I was 5 years old, and I'm about to graduate and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, are you going to stay here? And she like kind of looked at me weird. I'm like, what's up? And you could tell because she had spent so much of her life in China, she was almost hesitant to kind of talk crap on the systems or the way that things worked in this nation. She looks at me and she goes, when I was a kid, I would watch Mickey Mouse and I saw that he lived in a castle. And I used to think, if the mice live in castles in America, then how do the people live? She's like, then I came here and I realized that it doesn't work like that at all. And like, I'm paraphrasing here, her English was broken, but the principle stays intact. She's like, I don't know if I'm going to stay here or go back to China after I'm done with my education. And it goes to show you, because like when you're an American and even as a child and you're watching Mickey Mouse in the castle, like you have a concept that it's a cartoon, that it's not real life, that it's not based in reality. But you don't realize that that was propaganda for the rest of the world. Come here. This is how the smallest rodents live in our nation. What do you think is going to happen to you? To get you to come over here, and then depending on your situation, you either stay, go, whatever may be. And I kind of can't help but find myself reflecting on that story now as I'm watching our $1 trillion defense budget while our schools, infrastructure, and healthcare system completely collapse in around themselves. When you see that it ran out of ammunition in a couple of weeks. It hasn't been able to keep Israel as safe as they think we are. We're dismantling other systems in other places, which I've been reading up on it. I am not confident enough to speak to you guys about it at this stage of the game. Maybe Monday I might be able to pull something off because I've been reading quite a bit about it. But the economic turmoil that was created in South Korea when they agreed to take the THAAD system, the missile system that defends them from missiles coming in, it was huge. We're talking about 11 figures worth of damage here, tens of billions of dollars worth of economic damage for agreeing to work with America. And with no warning, with no heads up, with no economic benefit to them, it's now getting dismantled. So they have all the economic fallout from agreeing to take it several years ago. And then now they have all those losses, and they don't even have the defense system anymore because we had to bring it to the Middle East because it wasn't going as far as we thought it was. We're being exposed here in ways that I don't think a lot of people are willing to talk about. Obviously, the mainstream doesn't want to talk about it in any meaningful way. They want to talk about Donald Trump breaking the rules in the same way Obama did. But they don't want to talk about the fact that our world standing, the idea of what the American military system is, I think has taken a pretty big hit. I'm not advocating to go bomb the crap to remove them. We have the nukes that could just take Iran completely off the face of the earth. I'm not naive. But you're also going to be monsters if you do that. There's a matter of humanity that needs to be considered in this conversation. And you're watching all of these things bear out, some of which on national media, some of which on international media, some of which are just people in Iran filming from their phones that are finding one way or another to get it to their Iranian family members, either here in the States or in other places around the world, being like, show what's happening. Show this. This isn't making it. Let us know that this thing's happening. And as one person in my YouTube chat says, how is any of this making us more safe? 13 days ago, I'm telling you right now, none of you went to bed nervous about Iran. Not a single one of you went to bed nervous about Iran. Don't tell me you did. I already know you're lying. Don't bother. Not a single one of you went to bed worried about it. I'll tell you what, now I bet you a couple of us are, on top of an economic crisis that so many of us are struggling with every single day. Ken says, exactly, Ben. I have a lot of friends that are in China, and they say the exact same thing. And this isn't to spread the good word of China. I met a guy who was playing music in China not too long ago at a friend's party back in December. And he told me that the Chinese government would show up at your house, pluck a hair out of your head, and if you tested positive for drugs, you either did 5 years of jail or you had to rat out 5 other people that you did drugs with, unless you were white, in which case it was rat out 5 people you did drugs with, or you're getting the hell out of our country. China's got their own authoritarian issues that they have to work out as well. But in terms of the propaganda, absolutely. America puts it out there trying to instigate people to come to our neck of the woods. And you don't even notice it, because that's the best kind of propaganda that exists. You just view it as a cartoon. I got nothing but positive memories. Picturing Mickey Mouse dressed as a wizard making all the broomsticks come to life. You know what I mean? I never even questioned how did they afford that castle? Like, that didn't cross my mind. But other people see that and they're like, man, a mouse is in a castle. This is great. It's an eye-opening thing for sure. I see more text piling up, but we got to squeeze a break in here. Again, it's going to be a short one, so we'll be back and we'll keep this conversation rolling. Anybody has any thoughts, share them down the talk and text line. Hop on the YouTube channel, wherever you are. Back in about 2.5 minutes. Outside the Box, WHBY, and Political Voices Network. Frank asks, our culture is propaganda now. To a certain extent. I mean, realistically, what's our culture right now? Superhero movies, right? Go watch Captain Marvel. You tell me. You tell me if that's propaganda or not. The first one. Second one, which was unrightfully bombed, review bombed in the box office, was actually phenomenal. But, you know, anytime an action movie has women leads, there's a certain demographic of the male population that tends to get pretty mad about that. But I had a good time with the sequel. But the first one was definitely propaganda, without a doubt. There's a couple of those ones that are propaganda for sure. All right, so DSL says a mailbox is a castle to a mouse. How does a smart robotics Chinese students not know about scale? She's talking about when she was a child, my man. She's talking about watching these cartoons as a kid. And again, he wasn't living in a mailbox. It's like the Disney. It's a kingdom. It's quite literally a kingdom. Like there's no ambiguity about what this is living in. It's not like it ever showed you Mickey Mouse's castle and then showed you a house behind it for scale, and it turns out that he was in a shoebox. He straight up is living in a castle as a mouse. I'm not defending this. Again, I grew up on the hard stuff, right? I was watching R-rated stuff when I was 6 years old. I was not mesmerized by the trivial, childish things that so many children were amused by in their youth, all right? But I'm just saying, that was the attitude that was out there, and then we get mad when people come over here. And like, meanwhile, a lot of our stuff seems like it was geared towards bringing people over. Jerry says, on the evening of February 27th, I was focused on who would make the Brewers 40-man roster. Exactly. I don't even remember what I was doing the night before. I remember I had decided the next morning, I do remember what I was doing that Friday night. I tied one on a little bit. I was out till late in the evening. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a technology-free morning. I didn't do any TVs. I didn't do any phones. I went for a walk. I went and got some breakfast at a local diner near my apartment complex. And I just kind of removed myself from the entire thing. And I came back to, I crap you not, 45 text messages from different people being like, are you seeing this? Do I need to be worried? Where did this come from? And I'm like, I wonder what all this is about. And I turned the TV on and I was like, oh man, what a day to completely block out all news. Like, I did not even look at my phone until a little afternoon on the Saturday that everything kind of broke out. Needless to say, I wasn't thinking about it the night before. Madness, just absolute madness. Joe says, dude, this war is being run by non-military administration with a bone spurs president that doesn't listen to anyone and got rid of key military leaders. So yes, it's unorganized. Well, I disagree, Joe. He is listening to people. He's listening to Jared Kushner, who has had a vendetta with Iran and has a relationship with Israel. He's listening to Steve Witkoff, who has a vendetta with Iran and has a very close relationship to Israel. And he is listening to Pete Hegseth, who is one of the Christian Zionists who believes that a war between Israel and the Middle East will bring Jesus back to earth. So he is listening to people. I just don't know if it's the kind of people that are going to give you the unbiased or sane advice that you need in a time like this when so many different lives are at stake. Someone says, Frank in the text line says, I guess it's time to move to Japan because I love anime. You know, you wouldn't be the only American that is centered around that. I don't know how online you are, Frank. There's a big contingent specifically of American dudes that say that the women in Japan conform more to their idea of what womanhood is in general than the the raging feminists here in America. So you'll be joining a pretty large crew of people that might be considering the same thing here. Larry says, I'm pretty sure this war is to take the Epstein files off the front page. I'll tell you what, man, if the price of oil goes much higher, I think he's going to have to release more Epstein files to get oil off the front page. Like, it's very interesting. Somebody write that down. That was good. it's very interesting to me that everybody always, and I'm not throwing you under the bus here, Larry, but it's always like, oh, Donald Trump's doing this to distract from this. He's doing this to distract from this. They had to do the Epstein files to distract from the bad economy. They had to do the war in Iran to distract from the Epstein files. They're going to do aliens to distract us from the war in Iran next. It's a constant one-upsmanship that keeps happening. It's just one distraction after another, but ultimately that results in my opinion, a shrinking coalition of people not necessarily in this for the long haul. That's just me personally, at the very least there. But to me, it's a scary time. It's a scary time because I don't trust the people in charge. I think the endless wars are exactly that. They're endless. They're pointless. They don't serve us any cause. No one partaking in this conversation feels safer. And anybody who claims to feel safer knows bleeping well, if Cackling Kamala were the one that got us into this, you would not be feeling safe. And Donald Trump is not more qualified than Kamala Harris to be doing this. We all know I'm right. So pretend Kamala's president and join the rest of us in the appropriate amount of like, why are we doing this again? Because we need to coalesce around this. 70% of us have. We're going to need more of you guys to come along for the ride. And to be perfectly honest, in an era of tightening voting margins, the amount of people even within the MAGA movement that are disgusted with what's going on will probably be enough to tip the scales going forward. But it's going to be a question of, is it going to tip the scales into a pro-war Democratic regime or a regime that's willing to pull us out of all of this nonsense going forward until there's an actual threat to our livelihoods and our sovereignty, something that I'm beginning to realize hasn't existed for a very long time. I want to put a bow on this conversation surrounding DHS funding and the shutdown that is being talked about, but has absolutely been under my radar quite a bit. You see the lines at TSA. You're hearing people being told that you have to get to the airport 4 hours before your flight. Of course, the finger pointing is going back and forth. Of course, the partisanship is kicking in. I have a feeling I know where this is going to end, and I don't know that I am ready for it. I'm interested in your thoughts on the shutdown as well. Have they impacted your life yet? Is it even on your radar? The one in December was much more egregious because I think we were all much more nervous about our healthcare premiums going up. With the funding for ICE already allocated, this is a battle about trying to rein in ICE to a greater extent versus, are there actually threats to the homeland, as you're hearing the FBI talk about potential drone attacks in California. We're going to try and cram all of that into about a 9-minute segment on the other side of the break, and I welcome your input as well, either at 920-281-1150 or on the YouTube talk chat line there as well. Either one of those works, and we'll be back to put a bow on this show in just a little bit. Outside the Box with Ben Cominos here on WHBY. All right, we're back. One final segment here, continuing to discuss the ongoing conflict. Some big-brained people call it Donald Trump's war of choice in Iran. Other people, I'm sure, call it something different, but I haven't been paying attention. I'm sticking with that. Cynthia out in Florida called me during the break who wanted to talk about the drones from a certain perspective, so we'll get her insight. We got a couple more comments as well, but Cynthia, you take it away.
I was watching it. Well, first, let me start with Donald Trump. The other day, he said, "We know where there are Iranian sleeper cells in the United States." Well, go arrest them then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've been watching them arrest grandmothers on our TVs for the last 3 months, and you're telling me you knew where the sleeper cell terrorists were this whole time. Get the heck out of here.
But there's this general or an admiral named Brad Cooper. I saw a video of him. He said how they had brought one of the Iranian Shahed drones back into the United States, redesigned it, American-made sticker on it. But I got to tell you, and I know last year, Donald hired the Department of Homeland that terrorists in the United States. So if something happens, people be ready. foolishness.
Oh yeah, you were breaking up a little bit there, but I could pick up what you were putting down, and I appreciate the call there, Cynthia. But she was just saying they're mobilizing these different National Guard units in order to be ready for terrorists. But I, like her, think there's probably an ulterior motive, or maybe people that host very successful radio talk shows might be listed as terrorists in the not too near future. We'll have to see where that ultimately ends up heading. But she's definitely not wrong there, that's for sure. Mickey asks, in terms of California, I have multiple questions. Why would Iran strike such a liberal state if California doesn't want to hurt Iran? Well, I'll be honest with you, Mickey. I believe they're priming us to expect some kind of attack. I told you guys this at the beginning of the week. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I will take the evidence as it is presented to me. But I am on high alert for a false flag to garner more support for a conflict that is the least popular conflict of my lifetime at the start. It is the least popular conflict. And that would probably do something to do it. And I question why they're floating this California idea in general. I know some of the officials in Iran, which you take with a grain of salt, obviously, but they said, we have no quarrels with the American civilian population. We know that they, by and large, are voting against these never-ending conflicts. It's the government that we have an issue with right now. But I also know that that's the exact same rhetoric that we use when we're bombing other people, so that doesn't make me let my guard down here. You said, next question, what if it's a distraction because they're going to actually hit a deep red state like Texas? I don't think they're going to hit anybody, Mickey. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think they're going to hit anybody over here. I don't think that that's their intentions. I think they understand that our government cares more about dollars than it does about people. You'll be hard-pressed to convince me otherwise. Making sure that the Strait of Hormuz stays closed is going to tick off our government more than killing people here. Killing people, if you killed Americans, what you would do is essentially give the green light to completely wipe that country off the face of the earth, something that most Americans are not advocating for right now. I genuinely don't allow them to scare you with this kind of stuff. I don't think it's real. I don't think it's going to happen. Not only from a logistics standpoint, but from a common sense standpoint. It's like I always said about them acquiring nukes. They're not going to acquire one nuke and then launch it. They'd obviously be wiped off the face of the earth. They want to acquire a nuke so that we can't do what we're doing right now, and we actually have to engage with them diplomatically. That's what they want to do. And it's not like America is in their business all the time. I mean, they are. We surrounded them with dozens of military bases, but it's more so to keep a particular country in the Middle East at bay who seems to operate with impunity, and I think we all know what country it is. And I did receive a message that someone wants me to touch on, Norm wants me to touch on AIPAC a little more. I mean, I can't say much outside of they really feel like they're kind of becoming poisonous politically in this country from a Democratic perspective, especially. If you're taking AIPAC dollars, it's a lot less likely you're going to win your primary or your election. It's becoming something that they can't touch, but I really don't have much to say beyond what's already been said by so many people. We got a caller coming through. We'll try to squeeze it in here. We have a couple of minutes. Hello, you're on Outside the Box.
Morning, Ben.
Yeah, Dave, what's up?
Two things. CNN, I think last night, reported that Iran is shipping out oil via tanker. I guess they must be on the open side of the Suez Canal or something. Anyways, on that TSA stuff, Trump can move money around to pay them. They just don't want to, because I think the Democrats offered to fund it, but then the Mike Johnson doesn't want to bring it to the floor to fund them.
Oh, sure.
So they're just playing politics with funding on those employees working for no pay.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I have Kathy in my text line. I appreciate the call, Dave, saying, where can I find some short-term employment at TSA? Because she said she's an old lady that wants to make some waves. And I love her for that, because there's a retired population that's sick and tired of what ICE is. And I do think, and this is going to be a hard thing to end with 1:50 seconds left, so I'm at least going to lay this out there, and then we can kind of pick this up tomorrow. But this does seem like it's reaching the inevitable conclusion that the masks are going to come off of ICE Maybe they get badges. They're going to help make them more easily identifiable. And $50 billion is going to be sent to the military-industrial complex, and DHS is going to open back up. And there's going to be some feelings about that, because there's some good and there's some bad in there that I think are going to frustrate a lot of people. I don't know for a fact that that's where that's headed. I'm getting pretty good at this job, and I have a feeling that's exactly where it's headed. So we're going to find out. And I have more thoughts about that, but in 60 seconds, I don't know how much more damage I'm realistically going to be able to do. And as one person in the YouTube line says, I find it hard to trust this FBI. I'll be honest with you. I find it hard to trust any FBI. Look at what FBI used to do in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. It stands to reason they'd probably do the same thing in the 2020s as well. But that's just me. No offense to my FBI listeners, of course. You listening to me on Siri right now? All right. I think we've had enough. I think we've had enough for one day. If you didn't get a chance to listen to the entire program, download the WHBY app. All you got to do is search WHBY in Google Play or the App Store. Take me on the road with you, or check me out anywhere where you get podcasts. Spotify, Apple Music, Podbean. The list goes on and on. Spreaker. Go check me out there. There's also going to be a rebroadcast of this program on the Political Voices Network at 1 p.m. with a little more bells and whistles, or you can check what I'm streaming to my YouTube page right now. Just search @BenCominos, all one word with the @ sign, and subscribe to my page, please. I got to get out of here. Haley's up next. Outside the Box, WHBY, Political Voices.